6 months after the events of second chapter, we see Kevin on board the Rhineford Lusitania for a mission where he must retrieve an artifact called the Fool's Locket, which allows the user to bypass lies as truths. Kevin triggers the security after obtaining the artifact and begins to head for the host before knocking him out. He then jumps off the aircraft with the man in his arms. Kevin successfully lands on the Milky Bar before he receives a message from Einzelnut, the head Dominion, requesting Kevin to collect an artifact found within the Brill. As such, Kevin heads to Gransel Cathedral alongside Sid and Erica Russell, Tia's mother, as they go into the depth they arrive in the primal ground. It's here where Kevin analyzes the artifact, trying to deduce if it's still active or not. For if it's inactive, then he can hand it over to Erica to try to understand ancient augment technology. It's revealed that the artifact was found in Valeria Lake after the Liber Arc had fallen when the Oriel disappeared. It's only when Sister Reese arrives that the artifact shows its true self, with the church then confiscating the artifact. Afterwards, Kevin and Reese leave the cathedral and catch up, as it's been 5 years since they last met. Reese had recently been promoted to Squire, who are the people who help support the Dominion on their missions before they both realise someone is spying on them. They make their way to the port to corner the spy, and it's revealed to be Gilbert. After Reese and Kevin defeat him, a masked man makes his appearance, and the artifact that was collected begins to activate, transporting everyone into itself. Kevin and Reese find themselves in another dimension in an area called the Hermit's Garden. They begin to explore the first plane until they find a shining stone. They take the stone back to the Hermit Garden where Tita is released from the stone. She joins the group and they later find Julia in a similar stone. Eventually, all four find themselves face to face with one of the 77 devils mentioned in the church's testaments. Upon slaying the devil, the same masked man from before appears and introduces himself as Schwarzritter, and makes mention that they are in a world known as Phantasma. He warns the group that his lord wishes to see the group suffer while in this world before fleeing. The group make their way to the second plane, which is an identical copy to Gransel, but with fiends scattered around. They end up finding Mueller, Josette, and Joshua within the plane before making their way to Gransel Castle when they come across a spirit that gives them a key, which allows them to access the castle depths. In the depths, they find the Lord of Phantasma, who then summons another devil, but the group is able to defeat it and obtain another stone. Chloe appears to be the person that was in the stone. The group split up into two groups of 4 as they split in to explore the third plane. Kevin's group explores the Golden Road, while Reese's group explores the Silver Road. It turns out that each group's captain had to face a replica of one another, so Kevin versus Reese and vice versa, until the two groups merge again. Schwarzritter appears in front of them, congratulating them before making more threats towards them, though Kevin opts to ignore his threats as mere bluffs. After returning to Hermit Garden, Oliver and Zinn are released from the stones obtained from the two bosses from last chapter. At this point, Reese decides to leave the party as she feels unwell, but Kevin follows her to ask what's wrong. Reese asks Kevin when he will stop lying to the group, as she can tell that on the surface it may seem that Kevin is friends with everyone, but Reese can tell that he is still hiding things from them. After this exchange, the group investigate the fourth plane, which seems to be a replica of Le Mans State that Estelle and Annalise trained at the beginning of second chapter. The group explore the plane and are able to find stones that hold Annalise, Scheherazade and Agate before another devil appears. Luckily, Reese is able to distract the creature, though she is soon hit, and this is when Kevin relinquishes his true power of his stigma on the devil, defeating it. The group return to Hermit Garden, where Stell finally returns to the group, but before they can celebrate, Kevin faints. Reese puts the group's mind at ease by explaining that Kevin had overexerted himself from using his stigma. She later explains that the stigma Kevin possesses is different from the one Joshua had, as Joshua's stigma was an artificial stigma created by Weissman, who had stolen the knowledge from the church when he was a bishop. Whereas Kevin's stigma is a manifestation of one of the original 12. Possession of these stigmas is required to be one of the 12 Dominion of the Grolsritter. Reese takes charge as captain as her group explores the fifth plane. It's here where they find the last of the Sealing Stones. Alan, Ren, and Celeste Orsiles, Chloe's ancestor who was involved with the stealing of the Oriel from 1,200 years ago, are set free. Celeste begins to answer the group's questions about the nature of Phantasma. The first is that Phantasma was created by the Oriel as a way to grant the ancient civilization their wishes by replicating the real world. Celeste and her assistants created the Recluse Cube as a way to sabotage Phantasma in a way that prevented the Oriel from stopping them. It's only recently that the Lord of Phantasma has appeared in the space, manipulating it to create the planes that the group has already explored. Kevin has recovered enough to rejoin the group as he believes he knows the identity of the Lord of Phantasma, but requires additional information to be sure of their identity. As a result, the group begin to explore the sixth plane. After many bosses, the group finally approaches Schwarzritter, who after being defeated is revealed to be Louve. With his defeat, Kevin is sure of the true identity of the Lord of Phantasma as the group continue forth until they find a replica of Astor House, the place that Kevin grew up. After unlocking the secret passageway, the group find another primal ground underneath the location. As the group is walking, Kevin begins to explain his relationship to the location. Kevin grew up as an only child, but at the age of 7 his mother was struggling to take care of herself and her son. As a last resort, she decided to kill Kevin and then herself to end their misery, but Kevin was able to escape, though when he returned home he witnessed the corpse of his mother. Kevin would live on the streets for the next year until two girls spotted him. This was Reese and her older sister Rufina. The two decided to take the boy with them to Astor House, which was an orphanage run by the church, where he lived for the next 5 years. When he was 16, Kevin decided to become a squire of the church. He would then be trained by the Dominion Rufina swore loyalty to, Einselnut, Dominion 1 of the Grolsritter. Kevin would successfully become part of the Congregation of Divine Worship. Though one day, Kevin would be told that the Jaegers had targeted Astor House, so he decided to rush ahead on his own. The problem arose when Reese was held captive in the primal ground and her captor witnessed Kevin, who would then pick up the Spear of Lower artifact. This caused the man to transform into a monster that Kevin had no chance against. Though with Reese close to death, Kevin's stigma emerged and made Kevin lose control. Kevin's stigma had the ability to kill the man, but Kevin was overwhelmed with this new power that by the time Rufina had entered the room, it was too late as she embraced Kevin before being killed by him. As Kevin had manifested a stigma, he was then promoted to Dominion 5, even though he'd killed the head knight of the Grolsritter. Reese is shocked by the news as Rufina's cause of death was left vague as to simply dying on a mission. Although Reese is angry with Kevin, it's not because he was the one who killed her sister, but rather because Kevin had decided to carry this burden on his own without confiding in her. She then deduces that Kevin doesn't hunt heretics to uphold Rufina's wish, but rather as a form of punishment Kevin inflicts upon himself. And on cue, the Lord of Phantasma reveals theirself, where Kevin calls out Rufina to stop wearing the mask. Reese denies that the Lord of Phantasma is really Rufina, as she would never wish to comply with Kevin's punishing himself like this. Rufina then summons a portal below Reese that swallows her up before Kevin jumps into the same portal, where the two fall into Plane 7, a replica of Gehenna. The two make their way through Gehenna, where Kevin is forced to face some of the previous victims that he had witnessed in his life. They finally encounter Weissman, but Kevin's stigma finally evolves, reflecting a white light to demonstrate Kevin has overcome his trauma of forcing himself to appear happy on the surface to not be a burden for others. The two are able to defeat Weissman and the two devils when the rest of the group manage to find their way to the plane to help the pair. Everyone returns to the Hermit Garden where Kevin explains everything that had happened up to this point. Celeste then informs the group that she has found Rufina's location at the wasteland of Phantasma. Everyone then aboards the Arsail and fly through the plains until they reach Castle Phantasmagoria. Everyone splits into 4 groups of 4, where a copy of the Reverie, Patamata and Ragnar must be fought. Kevin's group then approaches Rufina, who questions how they propose they will defeat her. That is until Kevin points out that this is in fact not a copy of Rufina, but rather a copy of Kevin's own stigma. After defeating the stigma, the real copy of Rufina is released, which allows Kevin and Reese to have one final conversation. This is due to the final fragment of the stigma remains within Rufina and will not be destroyed. After realizing that he doesn't need to carry the burden alone, Kevin invites Reese to help shoot Rufina with his crossbow so they can share the pain together. Everyone reunites and the exit of Phantasma has finally been unlocked. Everyone says their passing words for the next time they see each other, before Kevin and Reese are the last ones to climb the stairs leaving Phantasma. In third, there are a total of 20 doors, though I'll only be recapping the main doors that reflect additional information for either characters or the world. So we'll begin with Moon Door 2. This is a flashback to 5 years after the 100 Days War, where we follow a young Scheherazade as a bracer. She is tasked with giving a tour to a young Aina and while in Grandsel Cathedral comes across a blind journalist called Marcel Nielsen. He is able to deduce that Scheherazade is a bracer just from her heir alone. However, Jaegers try hunting Aina down for her inheritance. As a result, the two end up going on a wild chase trying to avoid them. Scheherazade then shares with Aina that when she was younger, she lived in the slums where the only way she was able to survive was by stealing from the rich. She had to live like this until a travelling circus run by ringleader Harvey took her in as a performer. In Moon Door 3, we follow a young Chloe as she enrolls at her first year at Janice Royal Academy, where she befriends the student council body, though the important people to take note of here is Lecter Arundel and Lucy Sayland. Next is Sun Door 1. This provides the backstory of the Kapur family, for they once were Erebonian nobility until one day a merchant by the name of Minith conned the Kapurs out of their savings and forced them to become sky bandits. Then there is Star Door 4 that focuses on Kilka, as Elsa has invited her to join the Rocksmith Agency. This is an intelligence division that reports directly to President Rocksmith in Calvert. Kilka ends up accepting this offer as since the death of her father, she has struggled to find her place in the world. The most dark door is easily Star Door 15, which details Ren's experience in a place known as Paradise. Ren would remain in a room with 4 other children whom would have to work, though Ren would notice that after their job the children would be injured. The children would try to protect Ren from working, though in the case that she was ever requested, they would give her tips that prioritised the customer that had requested her above anything else. Though eventually, Ren and Cross are the only ones left, with Cross frustrated at Ren for keeping him alive for so long. It was only a matter of time until a customer requested Ren for her service, where she is taken out to a room and a man greets her. Ren is then fed a liquid that helps her with her job pleasing the man. We then hear the building set ablaze as a young Luve and Joshua kill all the people in their way. That is until they find a girl with purple hair, naked, with cross scars up her legs. The two save the girl and bring her back to the society. Sometime in the future, Ren spots her old parents as they carry their new child, though before she can approach them, Luve stands by Ren's side. Ren decides that they are not worth the hassle, as she has a society in Patamata who are her real family. If we move to Sardor 8, this is where Olivert and Queen Alicia are talking before Chancellor Osborne from Erebonia with his secretary, Lecter, make a shocking visit. Osborne and Olivert begin to have a private conversation over the current political situation within Erebonia. Although Osborne and Olivert both share a resentment towards the noble faction held by the four great houses, Olivert is quick to point out how Osborne uses very questionable tactics. Osborne has a record of annexing neighbouring regions of Erebonia by making deals with said regions by expanding the railway network to improve their trade before they soon have to rely on the country. Although Osborne invites Olivert to his cause, Olivert declines the offer as he suspects that Osborne is already working with Ouroboros as seen with Erebonia's response when the Liber Arc first appeared. Olivert eventually challenges Osborne to see who will come out on top for facing against the noble faction. Startle 13 then sheds light as to what Cassius was up to at the beginning of first chapter. The intelligence division within Erebonia report that the Jaegerkorps Jester had mass bombed multiple Bracer guilds over Erebonia. Cassius Bright was summoned 2 days after the terrorist attacks to help with the emergency. It took 2 months for the Cassius and the intelligence division to counter the Jaegers after working together. Though upon completion of their mission, Erebonia realized the threat Cassius poses for his masterful strategies and thus marked as a max threat to Erebonia if he was ever enter the country again. We then move to North Ambria and Stardor 2. This retells the Northumbrian disaster back in 1178. This is where a giant pillar of salt fell from the sky one day and killed everything within a radius by transforming the surrounding area into salt. The 8th Dominion investigated the pillar, though the pail was not thought to be an artifact, but rather a gift from the goddess in some form. The pail had destroyed Northumbria's economy, with the aftermath of the pail still experienced in present day. Not to mention, during the disaster, the then Prince Balmond abandoned his people, which caused a revolution to brew and the creation of the Northern Jaegers to try and restore the economy by providing their service to other countries. Finally is Sardor 14, which follows Campanella after his last appearance in 2nd chapter. Campanella makes his way back to the main room on the Glorious, where he enters the celestial globe where he meets with the other 7 Anguists of Ouroboros. They reflect on the situation with the death of Luve and Weissman, the loss of Joshua, and the confused state of Ren appears to be in. That's until the Grand Master of Ouroboros makes her debut, thanking Campanella for providing her the Oriel, for this signals the completion of the first stage of the Orpheus final plan, the Gospel plan. She then declares their next target is Crossbell as they move to the second stage, the Phantasmal Blades plan.